Welcome back. This is part 2 of the Rossolimo game that we started, and we ended at A4, and we'll pick it up here, Mike.
Okay, so with pawn a4, we understood that white wanted to expand on the queen side a little bit, stop the pawn from coming to b5, and maybe later lift the rook to a3. All right, so black responds with pawn b6.
And Mike, I understand why he would play this. They want to move the bishop on c8, but if they move the bishop on c8, the pawn on b7 hangs. So I understand the idea, but it seems to be a little weakening. Can you explain why this is a weakening move in the position?
Sure. So by moving the pawn to b6 from b7, it weakens the pawn on c6. Let me just highlight that here. So the pawn on c6, although defended by the knight on e7, is going to be a target for for white's pieces to attack. In addition to that, it weakens the light squares, and perhaps if we go back a move here, black maybe should have thought about playing rook b8. You know, pawn moves are permanent, so you can't get them back, and so rook b8 would protect the b7 pawn, allow the bishop to develop, because I think black really was searching for a way to get this bishop in the game. Another idea as well, besides rook b8, is to play pawn to a5, and that move, what it does is not only stops white's pawn from going to a5 itself, it looks to take complete control of the b4 square. And why that's important is because with the a pawn having moved, b4 becomes an outpost where black can post that knight into that square and really cause white some problems perhaps later on in the game.
Thank you. All right, so we're back at b6 now, and right away Rossolimo immediately attacks the c6 pawn. And the next move, bishop b7, and this another small mistake here. He pins his own bishop. So we see that the queen is now directly in the same line as the bishop. And what do we hear all the time? You put pressure on the pinned piece. So pawn goes to a5, attacking the pawn, and now our rook comes to c8. Mike, what do you think from here? How should white continue in this position?
Well, you know, it's amazing because this move a4 put some pressure on his opponent, and really what he did is kind of pose some questions to his opponent and said, where are you going to continue for the rest of the game? What's your plan? Well, black didn't stop the pawn, so white's going to continue to look to push that pawn, and in fact, black now has a serious problem because that bishop is completely out of play.
That's right, that bishop is terrible, but I also like what he did. He centralized the knight. Notice all the two knights are both in the middle of the board and ready to jump anywhere if they want to go queenside or kingside. So this is great to just, if you're not sure, you centralize your pieces, and then they can do lots and lots of things. So the two knights are doing a great job here.
Okay, and what a beautiful move by Rossolimo here. He sensed that his opponents, not sensed, but you could see that his opponent's pieces, for the most part, are on the queen side of the board. And he used the space that he created in the opening beautifully by shifting the queen along the third rank. And now, all of a sudden, black's king is going to be in real trouble. The only piece that he has close enough to defend is this knight on e7. And the bishop for black on a8 is out of the game. The rook on c8 is out of the game. And so he's in some trouble here, and what he looks to do is attack the queen, put a little pressure on Rossolimo's pieces. But now that knight is kind of caught off sides, and it's really in no man's land.
Right, and now in this position, I've told many of my students it's really, really sometimes hard to find the best move if you're defending. Defending is so much harder than attacking. When you make an attacking move and it's not the best, maybe your attack slows down a little bit, but it continues. If you make a bad move when you're defending, the whole position can fall apart. Rook a3, it threatens to move the rook over to g3 and to go for checkmate. So we see this. The question is, how does black defend this, Mike?
Okay, so black makes a mistake here. In fact, he plays knight e6, which, if we're looking for, say, a losing move, this turns out to be the losing move. Strategically, though, the real problem for black was that they were kind of playing aimlessly without a plan, and this bishop kind of just got completely caught out of the game. Perhaps what black needed to do was maybe play c5, countering attack the center, and maybe get his bishop into the game somehow to have some relevance. But like Felix said, it's a lot more difficult to defend than is to attack and put pressure on your opponent, and knight e6 turns out to be a really bad move. But you know what else, I guess, you know, he was trying to defend that g7 pawn, and he was also worried about maybe the pawn coming to g3 and the knight having to retreat anyway. Okay, so bishop takes knight,
getting rid of the defender in the middle of the board, which is very important.
That's right. He also was, at this point, I'm sure he saw what was coming, and
beautiful. This takes advantage of the pin that we have against the king check. King has to move, and now probably one of the prettiest moves in chess.
Yes. You know, Felix, I'm going to ask the viewers here, just pause your video, okay, and try to find the best move. All right, well, if you're back, if you found this move, you're definitely on your way to becoming a grandmaster. Wow, what an idea.
Queen g6, it's beautiful. The queen just says, take me, I dare you.
Yes. Well, the threat, of course, is, you know, taking on h7 for checkmate. But I mean, wow, what an idea. So let's just walk through it here. If the pawn were to take the queen,
this
then
one
rook
immediately
h3
checkmate.
is checkmate, right? And if the f pawn were to take the queen, we have knight takes g6 check, pawn takes nr same, checkmate. And on top of that, if they, instead of taking the queen, took the knight, right, we have queen takes f6 check. If the king moves, the rook comes to g3, and that will be mate. And if the knight blocks the check instead, then we can just pile up, put pressure on the knight, and at the very least, we win our opponent's queen. Okay, but in the game, his opponent tried something. He played, went a little too far there. He tried queen to c2.
Wow, this is a great try. And what is the finish here?
Well, he just completely ignores it and plays rook to h3 and says, you know what, you could take my queen a third way. It doesn't really matter.
Please take the queen.
Yes. Yes. And at this point, Black resigned. But if, you know, I would actually recommend that you try to work out the rest of the game. And hope you enjoyed it here. Again, it's Mike and Felix for the Chess Channel.